Okay, I think we can start, and it's too early, so I hope people are still joining us, and we'll have this live streaming link so that people who are not able to join us in person will be able to join us through virtual as well. Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Shreya Kesi. I'm a Systems Transformation and Tracking Youth Fellow at the Climate Champions team. I come from Nepal, and in Nepal we have a local way of greeting. We say namaste. I think you have heard that before, but I'm not sure if you know the meaning. So the real meaning of namaste is the light inside my soul honors the light inside. Okay. Okay, I think, yeah. Yeah, so the light inside my soul honors the light inside your soul. So let me say this again, namaste once again. Thank you for coming to our session on the JETCo Dialogue, the role of non-party stakeholders in fostering a just, financed and inclusive just energy transition, a just energy transition collaboration for Asia-Pacific region. It is truly a pleasure to see some familiar faces in the audience and also to see so many new faces. I hope you are all excited as we are for this session. This event marks a significant milestone in our journey, the culmination of a series of regional dialogues led by the Climate Champions team. We have had these regional dialogues in the past regional climate weeks. We have had this in Nairobi in the Africa Climate Week, in Saudi Arabia in the MENA Climate Week, and in Panama in the Latin American Climate Week, just before we came to the Asia-Pacific region. And here at the Asia-Pacific Climate Week, we are closing this chapter of regional dialogue with a series of consultations and remarkable conclusions. So congratulations for being a part of this endeavor feat. We want to make this dialogue as inclusive and as dynamic as possible. Therefore, we are looking forward to a very interactive session and to hear from a diverse range of non-party stakeholders. And what really matters is, of course, expertise, but then beyond that, we really value your perspective and the voice that you bring in this session. So yes, we are very looking forward to hearing from the audience as well. And in fact, if you would like to be a part of this, if you'd like to be on the center of the discussion, we also encourage you to take the front seats, which is empty right now. And also we have a digital rapporteur who will ensure that all of the insight shared here will be heard, of course, in this room, but also considered afterwards. And yes, without further ado, I would like to ask Frances Way, our Executive Director of the Climate Champions team, for an opening remarks. Please welcome her with a round of applause.
Thank you, Shreya. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to this session co-hosted by the UNFCCC and the Climate Champions team. We're going to discuss approaches to the just and inclusive energy transitions. In the last 6 decades, temperatures in Asia-Pacific have risen more rapidly than the global average. 6 out of 10 of the countries most severely impacted by disasters are located in this region, leading to disruptions in food systems, economic setbacks, and societal destabilization. But also, with population growth and continued reliance on fossil fuels, 6 out of the global top 10 countries emitting greenhouse gases are also from the APAC region. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, global pathways that limit warmings to 1.5 or even 2 degrees are characterized by deep, rapid GHG emissions reductions, with net zero emissions in the early 2050s. And according to the net zero scenario of the International Energy Agency, stringent and effective 25% by 2030 and 80% in 2050. At the same time, there's an urgent need to ensure clean, secure and affordable access to energy for all, whilst ensuring decent livelihoods. The Climate Champions team is developing a framework for non-party stakeholder collaboration to foster just, managed, financed and inclusive energy transitions, the working title JETCo. Local communities are the first to experience the potential positive and negative impacts of these transitions. As such, the framework that we're working on aims to translate public-private cooperation into real investment, fostering direct, impactful and fast implement action by non-party stakeholders in local communities. And to do it right, we want to learn from you. what has worked so far, what has not, and the most important issue, what we need to do to enhance our capabilities to deliver just transitions through collaboration to make real-world projects happen. These initiatives can include direct investment from the private sector in communities, de-risk by concessional finance, blended finance, and guarantees, as well as offtake agreements. The pressing need for a fair transition to sustainable energy is unmistakably evident in small island developing states, also known as SIDS. Despite grappling with considerable obstacles such as heavy reliance on fossil fuels, surging energy expenses, and heightened susceptibility to natural disasters, SIDS have demonstrated steadfast dedication by establishing ambitious objectives in their nationally determined. Their endeavours have resulted in a noteworthy 69% increase in unconditional targets for the Paris Agreement and SDGs, along with achieving a total renewable energy installed capacity of 7.7 gigawatts. Recognising these substantial commitments in the face of significant challenges, it's crucial to bear in mind the imperative of prioritising adaptation at the core of energy planning, as emphasised in the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda. We have partnered with the Cooling Pledge and UNEP to introduce this vital dimension for adaptation into the Sharm Adaptation Agenda as a new and key adaptation outcome for infrastructure systems in 2030. And we will invite non-party stakeholders to join these efforts through the Race to Resilience, our campaign to make 4 billion vulnerable people more resilient by 2030. For example, access to sustainable cooling is crucial for the well-being, productivity and resilience of communities and economies, particularly in regions like Southeast Asia and the wider Asia-Pacific, which are already facing extreme temperatures and heat waves and are expected to continue to do so. Addressing climate change requires decisive action in industries that emit the most greenhouse gases, necessitating efforts from both the demand and the supply side. Finding viable pathways towards net zero solutions is particularly crucial for challenging hard-to-abate sectors like heavy industry, steel and cement. On top of this, Asia-Pacific is the most regionally dispersed region due to geographically vastly distributed locations and environment, leading to different perspectives and emphasis on energy transition. Maximising the potential benefits of the ongoing energy transitions, putting people at the heart of planning, including the phase-out of fossil fuels, the responsible scale-up and deployment of mining, including communities in the decision-making and planning process, and ensuring that the future energy systems ensure access and affordability for all and are aligned with development priorities, should also be key topics for the discussion in this region. The high-level champions, with the support of the Climate Champions team, are working on the development of a collaborative framework to make these transitions comprehensive, inclusive, fit for purpose, and really just. Under this Just Energy Transition Collaborative Framework, non-party stakeholders will deliver efforts focused on investment, not aid nor debt, and de-risking to deploy impactful and inclusive projects for local communities, with a broad approach to just transitions. This means mainstreaming a just transitions approach into the non-party stakeholder decarbonisation efforts, planning and target setting, with adequate metrics to track progress, including workforce, fiscal, trade balance, equity and diversity aspects, contributing to minimise the potential negative impacts of energy transitions and leveraging the potential benefits, propelling ambitious mitigation efforts, leaving no one behind. This also includes investing in 1.5 compatible projects and assets supporting sustainable development under just transition mechanisms, as well as de-risking these projects in developing countries through finance and market development. Existing initiatives are broadly set in the right direction. A country-led, multi-dimensional and multi-stakeholder approach to accelerate mitigation, focus on each country's needs, constraints and circumstances, addressing also the social and economic challenges associated with the clean energy transition. The Just Energy Transition Collaborative Framework package includes regional consultation dialogues at each of the UNFCCC Climate Weeks, a compilation of case studies on the role of non-party stakeholders in fostering just energy transition in local communities, an inception document led by the Climate Champions team and co-written by 2 to 3 research institutions based on development countries, a white paper laying out the framework and terms of reference of JETCos, including scope, eligibility criteria, adequate metrics to track progress, and a pre-selection of subnational, regionally balanced pilot projects to be announced at COP28, ideally extracted from the project compendium. The conclusions and learning from the dialogue will feed into the design and definition of Just Energy Transition Collaborative Framework by identifying the potential elements to define the rules of the game, each player's roles and responsibilities, and how to ensure that these projects produce the intended impact and also into the global stocktake. We welcome this open dialogue to have non-party stakeholder voices heard in shaping the APAC appropriate JET solutions and collaborative pathways. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis, for that wonderful opening remarks and for also highlighting the crisis that we are in and the urgency to transition to clean and affordable energy resources to all. So the two takeaways was Asia-Pacific region is one of the most geographical diverse region. It has countries like Nepal, least developed country, to India and China, which is like one of the fastest developing economies. And there are 6 small island developing countries who are more vulnerable and whose voices and perspective needs to be accounted for. And the second part is the exciting updates on what's next after this regional dialogues. Now, I would like to, so continuing this conversation, now we have 2 amazing projects that we would like to share with you. And we have, first is Carbon Care InnoLab, which is an NGO dedicated to nurture and expand the active communities, especially focused on youth and students in Hong Kong to ensure that they are adopting low carbon and sustainable lifestyles, and they do this by learning, partnership, innovation, and action. I would like to ask Waifan Hu from the Carbon Care InnoLab to share about her project.
Thank you for the kind introduction and good morning, everyone. And okay, I'm still waiting for the PowerPoint slide. And I'm Fan from Carbon Care InnoLab, an independent NGO based in Hong Kong. And thank you very much for having us in this JETCo Dialogue. And we are very excited to share our solar care program and share with you how our program creates a model for just energy transitions. So maybe I can just provide a brief introduction of our organization, and which may help you to understand the underlying motivation behind our initiatives. And okay, the next one. And then at CCIL, we strive for innovative solutions to address the local needs while tackling the global challenges. And the next one, please. And with climate justice, yes, with the climate justice as the heart of our mission, and we strongly believe that engaging multiple stakeholders is vital to achieving a just energy transition. So back in 2019, we launched, the next one, please. Yes. And back to 2019, we launched the Solar Care Program in response to our government's implementation of Feed-in Tariff Scheme, which is a policy instrument that widely adopted globally, incentivizing the private and public sector to install the renewable energy system in their own premises. And with the technological advancement, the solar panel is getting more efficient, and which leading to a significant cost reduction. And however, we can show you the barriers about what Hong Kong is facing. Can you click another one? Yes. Even with the positive development, Hong Kong still faces a lot of barriers in the financial, market, technical, and social areas. Just name some, like the long payback periods, the lack of market information, the space constraints for installation, and also a general lack of knowledge and understanding when it comes to renewable energy, technology, and also policies. I know Hong Kong have our unique challenges, but I think many of the cities or regions have the same barriers. Okay, the next one. And given these challenges, we start looking into the ways to overcome the barriers hindering the public participation in renewable energy production. And so the third thing, sorry, the next slide, please. Yes, here's what Carbon Care InnoLab's intervention regarding these barriers. And the first thing we need to do is address the financial hurdles. We explored various funding options and identify the potential opportunities for our financial support. And we reach out to the different investors and also the funders, aiming to generate interest and convince them to back our initiative. And we have identified the potential, and also we have to identify the prospective beneficiaries. In Hong Kong, we have more than 8,000 non-profit organizations, NPOs, although not all of them have their own premises, but some of these NPOs do have their physical space for the PV systems. So, due to the lack of awareness and insufficient fundings, these NPOs have not been able to tap into the benefits of solar energy, benefits from the feed-in tariff scheme. Also, we recognize there is a lack of public understanding about renewable energy providers in the market. And to address this, we carefully select a pool of reliable RE providers, contractors, who can handle the installation and maintenance service for the NPOs. The next one. And here comes our mechanism. We have overcome the barriers and gained the support from our partners. And in the Solar Care program, NPOs can now enjoy installation for the PV system for free in their premises. And our vetted renewable service provider will take care of the installation. And also, we have set up the share value pool for maintenance service. If the NPOs share the revenue generated from the feed-in tariffs with us, and we will offer them maintenance service in return. And Solar Care program is not just about providing the hardware, it is a holistic solution for a sustainable energy system. We offer renewable energy knowledge and also the guidance on how to do the energy saving practice to the NPOs and encourage them to organize solar energy workshops to educate their target service audience. And then we can, the next slide. And now actually we are managing the largest PV systems capacity in Hong Kong. Sorry, the next one please. Yes, just show you our partner map. And we are now managing the largest solar PV system capacity in Hong Kong. We have constructed 26 solar energy sites at the moment, and the capacity is equivalent to avoiding more than 1,000 CO2 emissions. And by the year of 2030, the Solar Care program will pilot up and install 70 energy sites, and the total project capacity is for all these systems will be more than 4.7 million kilowatt hours, and this energy is sufficient to power around 18,000 households every month. The next slide, please. And then Solar Care program is not just about generating solar energies. The rebate generated by the feed-in tariff provides the NPO with a sustainable, sorry, the next one please. I want to talk about the social impact of our program. Yes, thank you. Yes, because the NPOs can generate revenue from the feed-in tariff, which provides them a sustainable revenue to support their local and international services. And I can share one case with you. One of our partners, our Bank International, they face a severe financial difficulties during the COVID-19. They really don't have incomes for nearly 3 years, And so the solar care program plays a vital role to helping them survive during those challenging times. And also another important social impact about our work is about the capacity building. We understand that our partner is not primarily focused on climate change or renewable energy educations. So we provide our partners with renewable energy knowledge and trainings and enable them to integrate the climate education and also the solar energy knowledge to their existing service. And through our partnership, our message has reached out to the youth and the elderly and also the disabled or other marginalized communities. And since the launch of our solar care program, we have organized more than 100 educational activities, including the guided tours and also training sections, workshops, and also webinars, directly involving nearly 5,000 participants. And also, the solar care program incorporates a monitoring system to effectively track and report the energy production of these PV systems. And this data is transparent and accessible to various stakeholders, and including the general public. So our program has provided such transparency to effective the energy planning and also the policy development for our government. Yeah. Then, yes, the final slide. I understand that I'm running out of time, but allow me to summarize our model. The solar care program emphasizes the significance of social intervention rather than focus on only the new technology invention. We acknowledge that the necessary of technology is already exists in the market. What we need is a supportive policies and also the active engagement of all stakeholders. And through the collaboration between the government, the industries, and also the private sectors, the NGOs, and diverse communities, we think we can generate a collective momentum towards achieving a just energy transition. Yes, that's all of our sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Waifan, for sharing that amazing work. Carbon Care Lab is leading in Hong Kong, and its localized approach to expand the solar rooftop throughout Hong Kong. And I believe it is one of the good practices that young people in other countries, even in the Asia Pacific, can apply in their countries. Moving forward, I'm delighted to introduce a recorded video from Renew. This video is presented by Vaishali Nigam Sinha, who is the co-founder and chairperson of sustainability at Renew. She will showcase the renewable energy work led by Renew. Video.
મારું નામ કંચનબેન ખાણાભાઈ છે અને ચારણ કરાવું છું પછી મીઠાના કામે બનાવું પછી કામ પતાવી ઘરે જાઉં ઘરે થોડું સિલાઈ કરું એમ મારું ગુજરાન ચાલે છે એમ આ મીઠાના કામમાં જો વરસાદ આવે ને તો અમારે થોડી તકલીફ થાય છે અને મીઠાનું કામ કરીએ છીએ એમાં 15 દિવસે અમાર ખર્ચી આપે છે મને તો એમાં થોડું અમારું ગુજરાન નહીં ચાલતું તો અમે ઘરે થોડું સિલાઈ કામ કરીએ અને ઘરનું ભેંસું રાખીએ છીએ પશુપાલનનું કામ કરીએ છીએ ખેતી કરીએ છીએ.
The women working in the salt pan area in the little run of Kutch are heavily susceptible to harsh weathers caused due to climate change. Salt cultivation is a seasonal affair. For them, it's only a livelihood for 6 months.
અમે 10મા મહિનાથી આ મીઠાનું કામ ચાલુ કરીએ છીએ ત્યાંથી આવી ગામમાંથી આલી પછી આ 2-3 દડા ગારો ખોદી અને પાવડે માટી પાડે પછી 5મા મહિને અમારા જો સારી રીતે મીઠો પાકે તો 5મા મહિને અમારા માલ પાકી તો એમાં બિયારણવાળા શરૂ થઈ જાય કે તમારો માલ જલ્દી ઉપાડો, અમારે અત્યારે રણ બંધ કરવું છે. અમારા રણ બધું પાટા મીઠા પાણીના પૂરા ભર્યા એટલું અમારે નુકસાન છે, ત્યાંથી અમારે રોજી રોટી મળે.
During the process, the women rely on diesel-based pumping systems, and the cost of which eats into the considerable portion of their little income. This fosters a poor socio-economic condition, and due to the lack of income, the future of these women, including that of the men, is unsure.
We are in an area where a large number of women are spending most of their time working in this very difficult area. By the kind of work we are doing here in this region, we want to empower women. We want to give them the confidence so that they can ensure that they have a share in any cost savings in terms of the money which comes to them. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to upskill them so that they can become solar mechanics and earn more, live in a healthier way, have more comfortable lives, not get displaced by climate change. And our endeavor is to partner with local experts who can train them.
પહેલા અમે મીઠાનું કામ કરતા હતા, હવે સેન્ટરમાં કામ કરવા આવીએ છીએ કેમ કે અમે તક મળી છે તો સેન્ટરે આવી છીએ કામ કરવા શીખવા માટે. પછી શીખી જાશું તો અમને કંપનીમાં શીખી જાશું, પાસ થઈ જાશું તો કંપનીમાં અમને કામ મળશે તો અમારી રોજગારી મળી જશે. અહીંયા આગળ ટેકનિશિયનનું કામ શીખીએ છીએ, સોલારનું. હવે અમે સેન્ટરનું કામ શીખશું તો અમારે જો નોકરી મળી જશે તો આસાન થઈ જશે, મીઠાનું કામ નહીં કરવું પણ રોજગારી મળી જશે.
સૂર્ય કાર્યક્રમની શરૂઆત ખાસ કરીને સેવા, રિન્યુ અને યુએનઈપી દ્વારા કરવામાં આવી. સેવાનો મુખ્ય હેતુ તો પૂર્ણ રોજગાર સ્વાવલંબન છે, પણ એને કેવી રીતે અમે પરિપક્વ રીતે આખું સભ્યોને મદદરૂપ થઈ શકીએ તો મીઠા કામદાર સભ્યો જે છે વાપરીને એ કામ કરી શકે એના માટેનું અમે ખાસ જે એમની દીકરીઓ છે, એમની વહુઓ છે, એમને અમે આ તાલીમ સૂર્ય કાર્યક્રમ દ્વારા તાલીમ આપી અને એ સભ્યોને રોજગારીમાં વધારો કરી શકે.
We have partnered with SEVA, UNEP, and of course Renew is going to be leading, contributing and giving direction to ensure we have skilled women workers in renewable energy. After all, it's all about women empowerment, independence, financial, economic and social.
Thank you to our presenter for sharing this video. And I think it's very good to know what is being happening in different parts of, even in different parts of country where we have forgotten the voices of those who are most vulnerable. And it's quite good to know that how working in renewable energy is also benefiting women empowerment and in the social transition as a whole. So after this, now I would like to call our Energy Fellow, Che Yong, to moderate a panel discussion. Please give her and our panelists an esteemed welcome.
Thank you, esteemed panelists, for sitting together with us on the stage today. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meaningful dialogue on just energy transition in the Asia-Pacific region. I am Chae Young-hyun, and I'm honored to be your moderator for this session today. Today, we have an esteemed panel of experts who will share their perspective on just energy transition and its significance in the region. Before we dive into the discussion, let me introduce our distinguished speakers. First, Fun, as she presented earlier today for our project showcase. Fun holds the position of Program Manager at Carbon Care Innolab, CCIL, and possesses extensive experience in environmental policy research, especially focusing on energy policy in Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. Followed by Stefan. Stefan is a research fellow and a policy lead at the Stockholm Environment Institute's Bangkok office. His areas of expertise includes energy and low carbon transitions, land-based mitigation actions, and low emission agriculture, fossil fuel phase out, international climate and energy policies, as well as geopolitics of energy. Josh is a passionate learner and clean tech enthusiast, supporting energy transition from USAID, South Asia Regional Energy Partnership in the South Asian countries by enabling deployment of clean energy solutions and transforming utilities through advanced technologies. He is a member of Youngo Energy Working Group, official youth and children constituency of the UNFCCC processes. Mr. Gershon is a climate change and sustainable finance expert working as regional investment lead for Asia and Global Green at Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI. He has 15 years of experience working in green energy and infrastructure finance, supporting countries in the development of innovative financing instruments, international development finance for clean and renewable energy, and green technology innovation deployment in several Asian communities and economies. Last but not least, Kim from Papua New Guinea is the chairperson of the Commonwealth Youth Council. Kim is a member of various local and regional organizations, including Pacific Islands Secretary General's Young Climate Alliance and International Youth Network, and working on climate change, environment conservation, good governance, and the Sustainable Development Goals. We welcome all the panelists, and thank you for joining our panel discussion today. So yes, now let's kick off the facilitated discussion and an open dialogue. Our objective today is to solicit expert feedback and regional stakeholders in the Asia-Pacific region. Let's turn to our speakers to share their insights. So I would like to give 2 to 3 minutes of speaking opportunities for addressing the question of how are you contributing the just energy transition solutions, and what are the challenges you have observed? And what has worked so far and what has not in just energy transition processes among the non-state actors. Please share your expert insight on the JETCo initiative. Yes. So maybe we can start with Stefan.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I try to be within a 2 and 3 minutes time limit. So what can researchers do? What is our challenges? So I think for just energy transitions to become a just reality, I think we can all agree that science-based evidence is more needed than ever. We have seen with the COVID pandemic, misinformation, fake news, so to speak, is abundant. And I think science and researchers and think tanks can help that by investigating, for instance, their own methodologies to keep up with current events and to really provide science-based evidence for just energy transitions, because it's a costly endeavor. And only when you trust into the science and the evidence, then energy transitions can generate also the trust amongst people. Challenges sometimes we face as researchers is, of course, sometimes we're a little bit outside of the policy and decision-making cycles, so we have the good evidence and present it to policymakers, and they, nice, thank you very much, and they do something else. So that one of our challenges is how to feed into this kind of knowledge into the policymaking processes, how to team up with boundary partners to get our messages across, bearing in mind we're not advocacy. We still have science-based evidence, but we can offer suggestions and recommendations. And I think this is the role of us, of researchers and think tank people. We're very good at identifying barriers and problems, and then we stop and lay back and think, oh, we have done a good job. However, I think we should go more than that. And now it's time to work on actionable recommendations, on solutions, and it's also something science can provide, these kind of actionable recommendations and solutions. Of course, capacity building is also something that we do as science to policy research institutes to build the capacity of stakeholders, which is sometimes lacking, especially in the subnational level. People don't know what is just transition, what is the just aspect, for instance. And this is the last point actually I want to make. Yes, actionable recommendations are good, but sometimes the wonky stuff is also needed, because in our case studies, sometimes we encounter that people say, oh, what does justice mean? What is a just transition? And so science and think tanks have come up with a concept, like 4 types of justice, for instance. We can think about procedural justice. We have to bring all the people on board in the decision-making process. Then just transitions will be much more successful. We can also think about distributional justice. So in the past, in the fossil fuel-based regime, only the selected few well-connected people have benefited. Now with the energy transition, we have opportunity that many of the stakeholders benefit from a just transition. There's, of course, an element of restorative justice. What do we do with fossil fuel developments, for instance, with former mines? How do we reclaim mines? How do we restore the justice? And the last justice aspect, I always forget. That's why I have some notes here. So we had procedural justice, we had distributional justice, we had, I'm sorry, yes, and recognition justice. And this is, I think, was mentioned by Francis before. In this region especially, there are so many diverse actors and so many diverse vision of what a just transition can look like, and having this kind of dialogues bring the people together to share their vision and try to see how we can move forward is actually one of the aspects of a just transition. So sometimes wonky concepts might be useful to think about energy transitions, and this is what science and think tankers can do. I went beyond the 3 minutes, I apologize. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. It's no worries. You can go if those inputs are very valuable. So thank you for that. And in fact, science-based policy and science-based evidence policy is very important, and it's the heart of how energy transition should be shaped. And also addressing those 4 different types of justice is also very insightful. So we'll be happy to learn more about through the discussion today. Thank you, Stefan. Maybe we can pass the mic to Josh.
Hello. Yeah, this is Joshi, and I'm very glad to be here, and especially this kind of events which are bringing youth voice in terms of the dialogues of just transition is really wonderful, and I would like to appreciate the organizers at the outside. Initially, just transition has revolved mainly around the jobs perspective, rehabilitation, but nowadays the dialogue and the evolution has been quite a broader concept, bringing a lot of intent and purpose to bring the meaning and action for these kind of initiatives. Youth and children have to be given the center stage of any sort of planning that has to be that is being done, because like these are the generations who are going to upcoming, and these are the people who are taking all the results of whatever the decision process we are taking. So they has to be included and made sure that their voices are heard and their concerns are incorporated. Youth across the globe had challenged many status quos and kind of brought in, I would say, revolutionary decisions to be made by the parties when given an opportunity. So we should not underline the kind of perspective they bring to the kind of discussions at the events like this, which is a run-up to the conference of parties that is going in front of us, that's happening in front of us. Couple of areas I will not dive deep into each of it, but like as the discussion progresses, we can definitely discuss. But one major area is skill development, where the young generation, especially in the South Asia and Southeast Asia, we have a thriving young generation who is looking out for the kind of employment opportunities. And this, the just transition, if well planned, can really leverage all the skill set by giving them proper training in enabling this just transition, because we find a lot of gaps from the conventional mode of job perspective, where the young people can bring in the new perspectives with a proper and kind of well-designed capacity building programs for the youth. The other point is locally led development, wherein a lot of times it is all centrally, or like it's the power is being held at a particular geographical points, but like when the locally led development will be enabled, this kind of gives the livelihoods, and also the climate risks can be averted to an extent in terms of reducing the migrations and creating the local employment opportunities. The one more thing, interesting point is the LIFE initiative, which the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, has brought in. This kind of brings in a perspective where all the developed nations were fitting into a kind of behavioral pattern where consumeristic society. The just transition also has to bring them back, bring the behavioral patterns back to a sustainable mode of livings and lifestyles. So this has to be incorporated at a larger scale, which in terms kind of enable the just transition perspectives. And one more part was coming from an energy perspective. I'm working in the power sector. Clean energy transition is only possible when there is a proper planning of grid enhancements, and proper grid planning is done, because it is the backbone of all the initiatives and all the transitions that's happening. Because to ensure the access to the last mile, to ensure the reliable and affordable power supply to all the communities, a proper grid management and grid enhancements has to be done, and a lot of investments. We recently seen from various organizations coming out reports on what range of investments we need to ensure the transition to clean energy in a very just and equitable manner. The local governments were the key in delivering this kind of transition, because the national and the global, the declarations done and said a lot, but the action has to be taken at a local level. So empowering the local governments, the city planning authorities or the local stakeholders has to be empowered to really see the fruits of this transition coming in an aligned way, which will serve the broader purpose. And also, we should ensure the planning processes. For suppose a lot of schemes are still only bearing the benefits for the elite and the rich. For suppose some of the rooftop programs, I was very glad to hear the presentation before the project. But yeah, so a lot of times what's happening is only the rich and elite people are able to benefit from those kind of policies. Intentional effort has to be maintained to ensure those benefits where the clean energy transition, for suppose a rooftop program or a demand response program, which is being rolled out to ensure the clean energy transition, has to have that intentional effort of covering the vulnerable communities. So they have to be given the first place so that they reap the benefits, because eventually the cost of the transition is heavy, and it is and the vulnerable communities are bearing the burnt of the other side of the transition. But when you ensure these kind of policies are targeted to benefit the vulnerable communities at the outset, I think just transition will have its real meaning and purpose. Maybe I'll stop at this point, and we'll continue as we pick on the discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Josh, for your insightful. And there are very, very important points, many of the points raised. And I think Stefan spared a few minutes for you to go a bit more. So thank you for that. And yeah, I mean, as a youth fellow myself from the Champions team, I do highly agree on the emphasis of youth empowerment, where we're just not the figurative speakers who are invited to those dialogues and events, but also we're seeking for active clean jobs. As earlier I was talking to Gulshen prior to this event, how we should really close the gap between the youth who's entering those jobs for cleaner, greener jobs, and how that accelerate the transition to happen, because the gap between private sector and also the workforce is enlarged and enforced through the youth advocating for that sector. So thank you for all the valuable input. Now let's move on to Mr. Gulshen. Yeah.
Thank you, Che. One of my first learnings is that my introduction is too convoluted. I need to reduce that to a few words so that people can know me. Before I get into the technical stuff about just energy transition, by nature, I'm an investment-focused person, so I know that very quickly I'll slip into that mode and get into talking about viabilities and bankable projects and de-risking mechanisms. I will get there, I promise. But before I do that, just wanted to emphasize on zooming in on just energy transition. What that really means is when somebody loses a job in the coal sector or in the fossil fuel-based sector, one of the first things that household will lose a job is because all the revenues have gone, right? So one of the first things that they drop is probably education to their kids, right? The easiest job to get is probably for a woman to take up substandard jobs. So that is what the impact that we're talking about. And I was talking to Jack, my colleague, and he mentioned that we're probably about to lose 1 million jobs. So that's 1 million households getting very easily getting into this kind of a situation. That's something that we definitely need to avoid. So at GDGI, we wrote the first concept and discussed it with Canada to go beyond just energy transition, to look at gender just energy transition, to mainstream women into STEM jobs, STEM jobs, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, to enable new forces to come into new workforces, to enable them with the right kind of skill sets to come into the job market linked to the energy transition and renewable energy. Now, there are two ways to look at just energy transition. One is about decommissioning coal plants and others, and the second part, of course, is about accelerating clean technologies and getting new technologies and utility scale large projects to balance the energy that needs to come back in when we decommission these plants. Leaving alone that, of course, the pressure on energy access still remains to be a big part, and something that at GDGI we are supporting countries like Indonesia, which is discussing JETP. We are partners with JETP working groups. There is a parallel program which was announced at the back of G20, which is energy transition mechanism led by housed in PTSMI, which is the infrastructure bank and the Ministry of Finance. We support them to work with the Green Climate Fund. We're putting in proposals there to support energy access for small islands in Indonesia which are not connected to the grid. So that program is something that GDGI is working on now. When you look at the finance perspective of just energy transition, I mean, technically we need viable projects, right? You can't just go to coal plants and say, well, they have power purchase agreements, which is actually a legally binding commitment for 20, 25, 30, 50 years, 40 years sometimes. And when you need to decommission these plants, you need to come up with, well, how are the commitments to pay going to come down? Of course, there are financial tools, accelerated depreciation. I don't want to get into jargons, but there are many tools that we're working on to try and come up with what is really viable to do. Then, of course, there are de-risking mechanisms. When you want to bring up renewable energies, you want to bring in private sector players to come in and look at those investments. You need to de-risk the projects so that they can consider putting in their money into new projects, and which of course, private sector is there to make money, so we need to make sure that they make enough above the bank rates, technical term project IRR, for them to get some money back when they invest into this. Now, carbon money is probably, by far a very strong tool and an added layer of result-based financing, I would say, which is going to be a key factor, according to me, to make these projects viable. Of course, Francis mentioned about hard-to-abate sectors. We need to look at how some of the sectors which are not, which cannot, the energy systems cannot be abated if you don't put in systems like green hydrogen or systems like, large-scale biomethane projects and things like that. So those are more technically challenging. You need strong business models. The need for business model, I think, is going to be very, very important, particularly in the finance space. Now, what we do at GDGI, we work with a German-supported project supporting Indonesia and Vietnam, on working particularly on JETP and their programs and looking at the commercial viability, looking at gender mainstreaming. Those are the key components of our projects. And of course, looking at the layers of carbon finance through our team, and particularly looking at Article 6 and getting these countries to look into that. Now, what are the challenges? I really feel that, we try to be a part of many platforms, but I still feel that a lot of efforts are in silos, particularly at the local government level. Their voices really need to be heard, and we need to bring that back. And I was talking to Kapil and really encouraged by what you guys are doing, particularly to get the voice of non-party stakeholders to come and get heard into these forums. The role of MDBs, bilaterals, development finance is also, remember one thing, they do come up with one incentive of making money as well. So we need more neutral entities to support the government. When such good research comes out, which is science-based, you really need to follow it up with neutral advice, not so much the MDBs going and saying, oh, you know what, there's a debt on the back of which, of course, they have that as their incentive to support the country. So we need more neutral advisors. We try to be one to come in and bring in the neutral aspect to the governments. I think I've spoken way more than 3 minutes, but one last thing that I do want to mention is we need leadership forums. We need leaders to talk about their experiences and cross-country exchange, not just within the country, but cross-country exchange, which, these are the forums that probably can be used where we get leaders of different, ministries and ministers come in and talk about, well, this is why we would not be doing it. And these are our challenges. And I can promise you these local challenges, I'm a firm believer that a program has to be tailored to the local needs of that particular province, not so much the country even. But I think these cross exchanges will make people think about what their program should look like. I'll stop there, but that's my thought on JETP status. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Gulshan, for those impactful points. In fact, finance and the points you raised about neutral entities, emphasizing in the science-based projects, making sure the finance is connected to the project itself and to be responsible of accelerating this small-scale, localized projects for just energy transition is indeed very important. So yes, and we do acknowledge GTGI's work with JETP-s, and we do also want to see how, aside from JETP, when we say JETCo, how can non-party stakeholders work together to approach more bottom-up and localized projects to accelerate energy transition. So your insight will be very also important in this, working as a tandem with JETP and JETCo together to accelerate energy transition. So thank you. Kim, I know you've waited for quite a long time, and it will be great if you could also provide some, we've mentioned several times of SIDS and Pacific Islands perspective on energy transition, and we do want to hear your voice. I know you also have a great youth perspective in this, so if you could incorporate those ideas, they'll be very good.
Thank you, Chair. I think, yeah, as you mentioned, also I work within the youth space, so I'll try to incorporate those perspectives. And just the background, Pacific of island region, up to approximately between 60 and 70% of the population, which exclude Australia and New Zealand, don't have access to electricity, which is totally opposite to the sub-Saharan countries, a huge marginalized community. In Papua New Guinea alone, from where I come from, 85% of approximately 10 million over don't have access to electricity. What does this mean as growing up in the rural areas? 85% are in the rural areas, so these 85% don't have access to rural areas, to energy. When I was growing up as a kid, we have those kerosene lamps. We study based on kerosene lamps. You have a 1 liter per household, and it takes you a week or two, and then that kerosene lamp burns out. What does this mean for a rural primary age student, or a student in the community? He doesn't or she doesn't have access to electricity in order to study in the night. And of course it affects his progress, career progress, and also future development. And that's only, you're talking about a light in the night to study, because during the day they have house chores. This is very basic to what you're talking about, rural community engagement. When it comes to the transition, and that gives us the potential as Pacific, small island developing compared to the developed. The challenges we see in this cross-country experiences, we see in the developed countries, we don't have to repeat them, of course, speaking of fossil fuels, but it won't phase out quickly, as most activists always mention, because we see the potential, it has driven the global community to this far. Now, for a small island developing country, you see potential in energy. The COP26, everyone gathered in Glasgow. There was one of the leading countries in renewable energy. So much to share experiences. How does that we take back into our country where we are developing, we learn from these experiences and we pave our way forward? Two aspects of that. And I think first is strengthening policies. And I think that's more related to institutional reforms at the subnational level, and I think a private sector expert has mentioned how can, and a great presentation you did on the grids. Most countries, especially in the developing, of course, you have monopoly of the renewable energy, the energy supplier. You have to get into the policy to allow access to other private sector, other business sectors to tap into that potential. Without the policy endorsement, the solar cannot go into the main grid. And I think that's one of the main challenges. So, having strengthening policy frameworks and even distribution of those kinds of, the initiatives down to the subnational and down to the road based on that context. And the challenge is that Pacific Island is an island nation. So you have many little islands. You can't put a grid and then run a cable to another island because the cyclone will come and wash it away. It will wash it away the next month or so. So again, it comes back to identifying, and that's where initiatives such as rural electrification projects comes into, based on those kinds of concepts. And the third thing is building capacity. How can, throughout the week I've listened to blue carbon, access to finance, and how governments have raised concerns on in terms of capacity, and even this access to these kinds of initiatives have so much criteria in them that you have to tick off the box. Some countries don't have that, even to this kind of access to financing. And I think they are marginalized, So I think accessing down to that level, building the national capacity helps them to access. And speaking of, I think my colleague Youth Rap mentioned the skilled labor. The Pacific region as a small island developer, most of the skilled labor through the Pacific Labor Scheme mobility is more looking into fruits, into the agricultural sector, into the care sector, and it's exported outside to Australia and New Zealand. How do you build a population of young people between 60% to 70% of Pacific population are below 30? How do you build that skill? Make them efficient in order to bring down, once the potential is coming. There is potential, but how do you build them in order for them to have access to that kind of, and it's true skilled labor. We need the technical vocational schools, the TVETs. They have a huge role to play, and I think this has to be driven by the private sector, through government-private sector partnership. And I think, there is a huge potential to see. So all in all, seeing these needs, building the young people for the next future generation, even to date, will enable them, and these young people, mind you, they go back to their communities. Pacific, just some of the Asian countries, they're more communal. You encourage one person to have access to a household it builds the next generation of tribe community. In that family, you have 100 people. Access to electricity, energy through solar grids, off-grids, renewable energy, based on those island concepts, or based on those island background, help enable this, and of course, it's further their education. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kim. Thank you for that insights from SIDS and also Pacific. I think that's very important to put that heart of our discussion in JETP-s. When we talk about localized projects, we also have to understand how there should be more lights to be shed for the marginalized community, and how also the emphasis of, I hear that constantly, we hear the emphasis on grid infrastructure. So also try to find the right grid infrastructure to be deployed in the Pacific Islands is also very important. So yeah, and also I would love to hear more about building capacity for Pacific Islands and how we could better approach that among the non-state actors, non-party stakeholders, collaboration together within the JETCo framework. So yes, thank you. We are going a bit over time, but I do want to ask Wei Fun. I just want to ask one question, how the non-party stakeholder engagement can be enhanced in the implementation of just transition process. How is the NGO component working in the process of just energy transition?
And for our program, Solar Care programs, we normally work with the welfare-based NGO in Hong Kong, and they don't have the climate education as their own primary focus, but like through our program, they install the PV system in their rooftops, and they can include the climate education in their service planning, like organize the renewable energy tours to their members and also the service users, and they can just introduce the rooftop PV system to them, and then this makes them to include the vulnerable communities like the women, the youth, and the elderly, and make them to understand what is exactly renewable energy is, and also can raise their awareness about the climate change. And then most of the time, those vulnerable groups are always neglected by the mainstream, I think. So, I mean, through the Solar Care program, they can include them to the climate action, which is very important elements for just energy transition. I think what we emphasize is the multiple stakeholder engagement in the energy transition. So this is what our main focus. And I also want to mention another part about the funding part, because like I have mentioned about the funding matching, I mean, in the case of Hong Kong, climate change, climate consideration is getting more important for the investors and also for the funders. And actually they are looking for some impact investment. And with the invitation of our CCIL, and then we can match the funding, let the investor or the funder knows that there are so many impactful projects in our society. And also, I think with these policy supports, like what I've mentioned, Hong Kong have the feed-in tariff schemes, and we can generate revenues from these schemes. And then so the investor knows that their investment is not one-off, they are investing for impact. Like the NGOs can install the PV system for free, but like they can generate a revenue for like to sustain their service, to reach out to more different service users. So I think this is what the NGOs is important. We are like act as a social innovator to connect the policies and also the technology which is available in the market. So I think this is what we are doing.
Yes. Thank you. yeah, I really like the point about education. I think there's really not much of an emphasis mentioned throughout some of the dialogue so far on education and education of the climate awareness. At the same time, how just energy transition could be happening is very important, and to be at the heart of this bottom-up approach of energy transition is very important. And also, you've mentioned about funding matching, how there should be more impact investment. So I do want to pass this question to Gulshan, asking how, in the finance aspect, how will the finance portion of non-party stakeholders better finance on the impact investment, how that could accelerate the funding for small-scale projects?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think just wanted to pick up the way JETCo defines just energy transition. I'm picking up from Frances's opening remarks when she mentioned it is just, managed, financed, inclusive energy transition. I mean, that bit is summing it up in a much rounder manner, right? And I mean, it's kind of bringing the things into perspective, not leaving alone just energy transition, but it's kind of telling us what needs to be done, managed in a right manner, financed and inclusive manner, so that we hear from the local communities and get their voices heard. So one of the things that I wanted to mention about, actually 2 points, is what JETCo, you asked me when I closed my remark, is the complementarity of JETP and JETCos. Because I think what JETCo is doing is probably the harder part of it, because when you talk of investment, and there's a large scale investment being discussed. Of course, you get the eyeballs of the who's who and the big entities. But what JETCo is trying to do is probably look at more fragmented, not so easily forgotten space, and that by that I mean small scale aggregated programs locally owned and championed by local communities. Not easy. This is probably the hard part of it, right? But the inclusive brings it back to that it should be in the mainstream. I think we really need a champion, and NGOs do play a very, very, very strong role. I mean, when I talk to development finance, not so much the MDBs and bilaterals, but when I talk to development finance, we try very hard to make sure that they are included. I'm talking about the likes of the GCFs or the GEFs or adaptation finance, adaptation fund. We stress a lot about how do we include these programs, because these entities have a portion of finance which can be used to create that enabling environment to bring these. I mean, I'm talking about the grant portion, and not so. That is where we make that effort to include. And I think I really feel NGOs, particularly in the remote areas, can play a very, very important role. I do want to mention something about Pacific before I close my comment. Is we did something with Vanuatu. I completely acknowledge of the fact that the infrastructure is lacking. Particularly the grid is lacking, right? But remember, when we do off-grid electrification, we need anchor loads. You may know that, I mean, I've discussed this with PNG a few times, that there are a lot of telephony towers. There is telephony still. Even when you don't have roads, you could still have a telephone tower in the remote islands. There are 1,000 plus telephone towers. In Vanuatu, what we did, 110s, 10, 20, somewhere around that number, telephone towers, and we tried to switch that to be 100% renewables. It's easy because these telephone towers go in from countries like China, Huawei, and the others. We said, okay, let's package it with solar plant and ship it, right? What happens because of that is the communities around the telephone towers get electricity, right? So we increase the capacity. We propose that to PNG, and that is just one of our efforts. We are definitely not saying this is the be and all. This is a very small step, but something that can be done, because you're actually stating a very, very important issue. It's not really the energy access or the grid, but the road to take the towers itself don't exist, right? So there's no way to maintain them. So completely acknowledge with the challenges, particularly with the Pacific and the small islands, and we are trying our best, and we'll keep coming up with models to support countries like PNG. Stop there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
If I can just add a point to what Gulshan said about the partnerships. So that's very important as like here we as a South Asia Regional Energy Partnership. So what we are trying to do is like bringing that cross-learning experience from one country to the other. So in terms of, there are a lot of similarities in the challenges we face, and the solutions that we find at one place can really find a true place in the similar region across. So we are creating those such kind of platforms where the region can come together, cross-learn and implement. And also the grants perspective, definitely when a grant is being rolled out with innovation as at its core, we also add a grant part of it in our program, where we are seeing very innovative projects coming up for the grants, wherein those projects can be scaled up at a very large scale to bring a real impact on ground, which also includes the localized development, locally development, and also empowering the women entrepreneurs. Those kind of projects we can really encourage to the grants part of the programs.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and I do want to address this question in the same line to SEI and Stefan, to see how do you see that there are these remarks of how those grants could be accelerating for JETP process. Also, I think it shows how that finance part is crucial to accelerate this project. But how do you see this finance part, or as a research aspect, how energy transition could accelerate for localized project in JETCo initiative? Yeah.
Well, I think these kind of very local and subnational platforms are incredibly important, as was already mentioned before, because if you engage people here in this room, you will find people, but they're not representative of really like what's happening on the ground. So we are quite privileged here in these kind of fora, and we talk, but sometimes you have to go really into the local level and ask the people, what do you need actually? Because many of the projects are implemented like, oh, we have an idea, you need this. Then you ask the people, and they're like, oh no, we need that actually. So these kind of platforms, if you really talk with the people in localized circumstances, because actually this is two of the things you were saying is true. So on the one hand, one solution doesn't fit all geographies, for instance, geographies. So you have to have adapted systems. However, what you just said is also true, because we have to have a mechanism to exchange lessons learned, for instance, because some countries are more advanced than others when it comes to energy transitions, and we can learn from their mistakes, but also what they did well, for instance. So these kind of platforms offer this exchange of knowledge. And from a finance perspective, I'm not a finance expert, but for instance, we at SEI, we recently launched a project where we try to understand how climate finance can reach vulnerable communities. And one of the assumed answers is you have to have intermediary actors on the ground, like financial service providers, who are embedded in local communities actually, and who knows what this kind of village or this kind of jurisdiction actually needs. And so to linking up these kind of levels from the national level, and I'm hearing completely, we need good policies, we need good frameworks because they guarantee investment. But from this high level, how to bring that all almost to the village, that's actually the challenge. And I hope that everybody here can collaborate together, because we need research, we need private sector, we need finance people, we need young people especially, because hopefully they drive the change. And we need the experiences from the ground. So these kind of platforms are really important if you take it seriously and really ask the people and not stay in these kind of nice, cool rooms in a literal sense. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's great. I think that also hits the point and approach of JETCo, how we want to collaborate among the non-party stakeholders within ourselves to directly, if it's a research institute, directly feeding the scientific-based evidences for NGOs to facilitate those experiences, and also youth engaging to amplify those impacts in the future going forward. So I do
want to ask a question, and I know also we do have to open the floor for one or two comments, but I know we're going a bit over time. Kim, if you could briefly mention some of the key points that as a Pacific SID you would like to highlight. These are the points that wish to be amplified more, localized projects, key emphasis for JETCo.
Thank you so much. And I think a good colleague mentioned thank you for the efforts, especially shared experience in Vanuatu. That kind of integrated approach, you have the telecommunication plus energy that supplies the community. And I think, from my experience, we are working in a community where there's 1,000 people, plus it's an island community. So we have, up the water, small mini hydro water dam that we supply the 1,000. So, this was community, and mind you, this was set up by the community through their own innovative ideas at a community level. So seeing that need, I said, okay, we can actually, if you can set up a dam, definitely you can build a hydro, a small mini hydro to the household. This is at the household level. So again, I do acknowledge the integrated approach. It's up to government to acknowledge that, and also being supported by the private sector. And so electrification projects, rural-based, especially across the Pacific, is highly recommended based on the context and comes with integrated approach. Second, of course, this is to the development partners. As you mentioned about the role of non-party stakeholders, it's crucial, and I think development partners are heading towards that, identifying the communities and the flexibility to adopt to those kinds of needs at the community level. The challenge is when there is a huge donor grant coming from international donor agency, they have also specific criteria. For example, they don't try to purchase equipments or materials. And in the community, they need these materials, they need these kind of equipments to purchase. And if you say workshop building, you need workshop building, but where are the materials to support that realization of knowledge into reality to build a mini hydro? And I think that's where the gaps are in terms of development partners, where some, of course, they purchase, some they have only specifics, grants towards capacity building, to train it. And mind you, they've been running training for the last 10, 20 years. We need to see the results. You need to put the money into what tangible projects are that can be realized so people can see and feel. Knowledge has to be transformed into seeing and feeling so that their lives can be improved. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And yes, these discussions are very valuable, and I think we just kind of warmed up, and now it's the time to really wrap the session. So, but this, please remember that this is just the start of our dialogue on this, how we can better collaborate within the non-state actors to better accelerate the just energy transition. So I hope you can continue to communicate among yourselves, and also the people today here listening, and also virtually listening, to connect and see how we can better collaborate together. I do want to see if there's anyone who wants to raise any question or comments from the floor for the open dialogue. Yes, please come to the mic centered, and we will take your comment, question, and wrap up the session real soon.
Hello. Sorry, I'm short.
Knowledge and understanding of just energy transition. So addressing this issue, maybe Stefan, I think you could provide some input, as you've done a great research on this field.
Sure. Yes, please feel free to engage with all the panelists, but also with me. We have done recently a case study on coal phase-out in Indonesia. You asked about the main challenges. Well, one of the main challenges is policy coherence. So on the one hand, some governments still develop coal power plants while simultaneously having net zero emission targets, which is, if you believe, and I think we should, and this is science-based evidence again, coal is a very limited, if all, a role in the near future. Also sometimes, especially in the subnational level, there is a capacity gap, so people, they don't have the right policies in place sometimes to support a switch. This is one of the main challenges. Of course, the challenges will be different in each country and not the same in the region. But yeah, lacking policy framework sometimes and understanding and policy coherence, I would say, is one of the main challenges here, and I'm sure there is also some issues with investment, for instance, but maybe other of the people here have some reflections on the challenges, and I will yield the floor to them.
Thank you. If I may add, I think this is a two-sided approach where you have the coal, you have the mining industry that advances towards developing countries, resource-rich countries to abstract for profits, of course, for the energy sector. On the other hand, the COP and all these engagements and advocacy on a renewable energy. The challenges and the question to developing countries and to the drivers of such engagement, how do we balance, especially with the so-called the developed countries, that multinational companies from this behind the lenses of developed countries go intervene into developing countries who need support, who need financial economic support. So they are advancing into that for the prospects of course, the coal or the mining industry. And speaking, while my government, the countries in the Pacific, in resource-rich countries that are still there, the mining is still there. And then you have, we advocate, and then you have a mining industry, mining company going into abstract industries, take it back to the developed countries. On the other side, we try to advocate for renewable energy. So I think that has to be really, really highlighted in such international engagement that you see. Where is the balance? How can we balance when there is two actions going on at the same time? So if there is the call for renewable energy, one has to, more effort has to be, of course it will take time, we acknowledge that, we appreciate all the good things that happen. One has to supersede and to take progress step by step, while one has to, take it slow. So speaking of mining companies, mining industries, so forth, it really impacts livelihoods in developing countries. And seeing that need, communities, I speak of rural communities based, the deep sea mining now coming into the Pacific. They're abstracting resources deep beneath the ocean. Pacific communities rely on the marine biodiversity. You are impacting thousands and millions of lives in the Pacific. And we can't advocate, we can't talk, we can't discuss about renewable energy if thousands of the people whom we try to stand for, our lives are impacted. Then it will go down the hundreds of generations. There are so many case studies around the world. So if we are not taking these human lives, environmental issues so seriously, then what are we fighting for? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I think you can also follow up with the panelists later. Thank you so much for the question. And also, thank you everyone for attending this event. We will wrap the session today. If we can go to the next slide. So please stay engaged with our JETCo Dialogue. We aim to foster and also continue to create this dialogue among ourselves with the non-state actors. Please sign up for this QR code if you want to stay engaged for our regional partnerships among the non-state actors. And also feel free to have an open discussion continuously outside of the venue today. Thank you everyone for attending, and thank you so much for the panelists for speaking, for your insightful inputs. Thank you.
Very hard to live in peace.